Margaret Frances Turner was born Julia Jean Mildred on February 8, 1921 in the town of Wallace, Idaho. Her father was murdered when she was a child, and she fled to California with her mother in the hopes of starting a new life there. She came from a problematic background and came from a tiny town when she was a child. As a result of her beauty, sensuality, and multifaceted persona, Lana would eventually become a goddess on the silver screen, captivating audiences all over the world. A minor but remarkable performance in the film They Won't Forget, in which Turner played a juvenile murder victim, was the catalyst for Turner's breakout into the acting world in 1937. It was in this movie that she donned a tight sweater, which led to her being dubbed the Sweater Girl and immediately becoming a symbol of sexuality on a national level. However, Lana was much more than just a fashion icon or a star of the pinup scene. She was a dedicated actor who was always developing. She gradually took on roles that were more difficult and emotionally nuanced, culminating in some of her most acclaimed performances in films such as The Postman Always Rings Twice, which was released in 1946. Her portrayal of a femme fatale opposite John Garfield is still considered to be one of the most captivating and influential performances in the history of film noir. In addition to being a master of the genre, she established a standard for many actresses who came after her by demonstrating the capacity to combine vulnerability and manipulative charm. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, Turner collaborated with some of the most renowned filmmakers and leading men of her era. She starred in a number of critically acclaimed films, including Ziegfeld Girl, 1941, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1941, Slightly Dangerous, 1943, An Imitation of Life, 1959, a lavish Technicolor melodrama depicting contemporary life. Both her physical beauty and her emotional range and depth as a performer were on full display in the latter picture, in which she played the role of a mother and an actress who was having a difficult time making ends meet. At the box office, the film was a huge success, and it continues to be one of her most enduring works. Its themes of motherhood, race, and personal sacrifice continue to resonate with audiences. Even if the parts he played became less frequent and less prestigious during the 1960s and 1970s, Turner continued to be a compelling character in both film and television throughout those decades. She made appearances in films such as Madam X, which was released in 1966 and for which she was nominated for a Golden Globe. Subsequently, she participated in popular television episodes such as Falcon Crest. In a profession that is infamous for its short attention span, she also embarked on successful stage tours and public speaking engagements, demonstrating her versatility and staying power in the field. Lana Turner, who was considered to be one of the most glamorous and legendary actors of the golden age of Hollywood, was known for her stormy personal life in addition to her screen presence. The pattern of her entering into 8 marriages with 7 different men over the course of her lifetime became representative of both the passionate intensity and the love instability that marked a significant portion of her life away from the screen. Turner's search for a love that would endure the rest of her life was unsuccessful, despite her renown and attractiveness. Her spouses included bandleader Artie Shaw, actor Lex Barker, and restaurateur Stephen Crane, whom she married twice. She also married a number of other men who were attracted to her appeal, but ultimately failed to provide her with the household happiness she desired. When Turner was in her older years, she reflected on the disparity between her youthful aspirations and the experiences she had actually had. This is one of the most renowned and profound remarks that she has ever uttered. My objective was to have 7 children and 1 husband, but it turned out that I ended up having 7 children and 1 husband instead. The irony and heartache that so frequently accompanied her desire for stability in the midst of the glitz and mayhem of Hollywood were perfectly expressed in this remark. During the year 1958, Turner had an event that not only captivated the attention of the entire nation, but also permanently damaged her public image. This occurrence is considered to be the most dramatic and sad event in her personal life. Johnny Stompanato was the person who was at the core of the scandal. A former Marine who had become Mickey Cohen's enforcer and bodyguard when he had moved into the criminal underworld. Stompanato had a love involvement with Turner, but their relationship was notoriously unstable and marred by charges of emotional abuse and physical violence. Stompanato had been associated with Turner, During a particularly furious confrontation that took place between Turner and Stompanato in her Beverly Hills home on the evening of April 4, 1958, her teenage daughter Cheryl Crane, who was only 14 years old at the time, stepped in to mediate the situation. Cheryl retrieved a kitchen knife and stabbed Stompanato in what she later described as an act of protection. She did this because she was afraid for her mother's life and safety. The incident turned into a media frenzy, garnering front-page news across the country, and Stompanato passed away shortly afterward as a result of the wound. After that, there was a significant amount of public and legal consequences. Immediately after that, there was a coroner's inquiry that received a lot of media attention. During this inquest, Lana Turner gave an impassioned testimony that captivated the audience and turned popular sympathy in her favor. Due to the fact that the authorities came to the conclusion that Cheryl had acted in defense of her mother, the act that she committed was finally determined to be a justifiable homicide. This means that she was not charged with any crime. The episode left a lasting effect on Turner's life and career, despite the fact that she was legally absolved of any wrongdoing. Her role as a tragic Hollywood figure was solidified by the public's obsession with the murder and the sight of a beautiful and weeping Turner testifying in court. She was a celebrity whose personal demons frequently seemed to equal those of the characters she represented on screen. Despite the fact that she continued to work in the film and television industries in the years that followed, Turner was permanently overshadowed by the controversy and the emotional toll that it took on both her and her daughter. An enduring narrative of beauty, brutality, maternal instinct, and personal tragedy. The murder of Johnny Stompanato and the circumstances surrounding it later became one of the most infamous occurrences in the history of Hollywood. It was a story that further blurred the boundary between Lana Turner's movie roles and her actual life. During the golden age of Hollywood, when studio chiefs had practically unlimited control over their actors and public image, which was as well orchestrated as a Busby Berkeley performance, there were a few love affairs that blossomed in the shadows. Lana Turner, a gorgeous actress, and Donald O'Connor, a song and dance performer who never ceases to be charming, were involved in a covert relationship that was one of the most well-known and cherished icons of the silver screen. Over the course of several decades, rumors spread about a brief but intense love affair that took place between the two individuals in the early 1950s. However, it was not until many years later, after both celebrities had reached the pinnacle of their celebrity, that the truth started to come to light. Not only had they dated, but they had gone to great lengths to conceal their relationship from the general public. As it turned out, the reason was just as complicated as the entertainment industry itself. Lana Turner was by far one of the most recognizable faces in the United States of America at the time. She was no stranger to the press, as she was well known for her seductive beauty and a series of relationships that garnered a lot of attention. Donald O'Connor, on the other hand, was renowned for his youthful charm, great comedic timing, and exceptional dancing talent, all of which were immortalized in films such as Singin' in the Rain. He was the kind of performer that moms trusted and daughters adored, and he was regarded as clean-cut and wholesome by family audiences. He was a favorite of family audiences. However, the difference between the femme fatale and the guy next door was precisely what made their relationship both electrifying and, in the eyes of the executives at the studio, possibly disastrous. Lana's reputation as a dramatic siren, a woman whose life mirrored the high-octane passion of her films, had been painstakingly constructed by the advertising machine that was employed by MGM. In the meantime, O'Connor's brand was constructed on the foundation of traditional values and humorous comedic elements. A genuine romantic relationship between them would have been incompatible with the public identities that had been constructed over the course of many years and millions of dollars by the studio. The affair allegedly started during the filming of a variety show appearance in which both of them were set to perform, as stated by intimate friends and former studio insiders who later came out about the matter. In contrast to the possessive and violent guys that Lana had frequently dated in the past, Donald's gentle wit and humility captivated her. These attributes stood in stark contrast to the males that she had dated in the past. On the other hand, Donald appreciated Lana's strength and fragility beneath the surface of her strong and confident demeanor. They were able to discover a unique form of solace in one another. One's perception of being understood in the absence of the glare of the camera. However, the pressure increased as their relationship became more profound. At the time, Lana was in the midst of managing her own personal turbulence. The turbulent relationships she had, notably the one she had with the vicious criminal Johnny Stompanato, had already been the subject of tabloids. Due to the fact that he was bound by a contract, Donald was terrified of the wrath of his studio, which had stringent morality restrictions and saw any inappropriate relationship as unacceptable. When it comes to the attractiveness of the box office, the fact that both of them had children and reputations that they were attempting to shield from embarrassing scandals made the situation much more problematic. If they had been romantically involved in public, it could have put everything at risk, from endorsement deals to their very livelihoods. So they had a covert meeting. Letters were exchanged without names being signed. Dinner dates were held at private homes, and long walks were made after dark. While their time together was brief, it was intensely felt by both of them. According to later reports provided by Cheryl Crane, Lana's daughter, and O'Connor's biographer, there were times when Lana would drive out to Donald's property just to talk for hours in the car, parked in a position where no one would see her. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of melancholy, despite the fact that it was romantic. There were two individuals who had the perception that they were unable to be together in the open air. Unfortunately, the weight of secrecy ultimately proved to be too much for the relationship to bear. There were responsibilities and careers that were pulling both of these celebrities in opposite directions, and the pressure of keeping their identities a secret took its toll on them. In a low-key manner, they came to an agreement that they would never discuss the matter in public again, but the affection remained. During an interview that took place many years later, O'Connor was reportedly asked about the person who had escaped, and she hesitated and smiled longingly while refusing to mention names. When Lana was questioned about the several romantic relationships she had, she once made a cryptic remark which was, "There was someone who truly saw me for who I was." On the other hand, not every story is intended for publication. Former friends and acquaintances did not start piecing together the pieces of their covert relationship until a considerable amount of time had passed since both of them had emerged from the public eye. Finally, what fans had assumed for a long time was proven by memos from the studio, correspondence, and hushed recollections from those who worked inside the entertainment industry. What started out as a private relationship away from the spotlight eventually evolved into one of the most heartwarming and untold love tales in the history of vintage Hollywood. There was a brief romance that emerged not as a result of publicity, but rather in spite of it. Something that was beautifully real was shared by Lana Turner and Donald O'Connor, who worked in an industry that was predicated on deception. In addition, despite the fact that it was just mentioned in passing in their histories, it is now a powerful reminder. In reference to the sacrifices that celebrities made for the sake of their image, as well as the love that had to sometimes blossom in the shadows. While Lana Turner was living her beautiful but frequently turbulent life, she continued to engage in a number of personal behaviors that, despite being prevalent in the Hollywood society of her time period, would ultimately have a negative impact on her health. For many years, Turner was known to be a frequent drinker and a cigarette smoker. He also had a tendency of smoking cigarettes, vices that were firmly ingrained in the social fabric of the film industry as well as in her own personal way of life. Her public image was painstakingly cultivated to portray elegance and beauty because she was one of the most prominent stars to emerge from MGM during the golden age of Hollywood. On the other hand, executives from the studio were never stopping their efforts to safeguard that image behind the scenes. In point of fact, during the years that Turner was under contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, any images that showed her holding a cigarette were meticulously painted to remove the offending object. This was an early example of damage control in the field of public relations. A period when smoking was commonplace and even popular, particularly among film stars, the studio was concerned that such images could taint her wholesome or glamorous persona, particularly among younger admirers. This was especially true in the case of the film industry. During the time that Turner was entering her early 60s, a time when many celebrities start to review their lifestyles, she took the conscious decision to stop drinking. This decision was primarily motivated by concerns about her health and a desire to preserve some control over her aging body. The hold that nicotine addiction had on me, on the other hand, was considerably more difficult to break. Even though she made a lot of attempts and had a lot of advice from her doctors, she was never able to quit smoking. After decades of consistent use, a routine that had been profoundly imprinted in the individual's mind, the consequences of this addiction would manifest in ways that would be disastrous over the long term. Cancer of the throat was the diagnosis that Turner received in the spring of 1992, and it was a diagnosis that would irrevocably alter the final chapter of her life. Those who were closest to her, as well as her followers, were taken aback by the news. On the other hand, she answered with composure and defiance, as is typical of Lana Turner character. Following the announcement of the diagnosis, Turner issued a press release in which she attempted to reassure the general public by stating that the cancer had been detected at an early stage and had not affected her vocal cords or larynx. She made it a point to emphasize this particular fact, possibly in part because of her status as a screen legend whose voice had been a significant part of her allure for numerous years. She underwent exploratory surgery in an effort to remove the cancerous tissue from her body. After the operation, however, it was discovered that the cancer had already metastasized, meaning that it had migrated from her throat to her jaw and lungs. This was despite the initial hope. The prognosis was a gloomy new development. After that, Turner started to undergo radiation therapy, which is a physically taxing process that is made even more challenging by her age and her general physical state. At the beginning of 1993, she stunned a lot of people by making a public announcement that she was in complete remission from her cancer. A proclamation that seemed to reinforce her lasting strength and tenacity, as well as one that inspired encouragement among her supporters. Unfortunately, the victory did not last long. Just over a year after she announced that she had been in remission from her cancer, in July of 1994, the physicians confirmed that the cancer had returned. At that point, the sickness had progressed to a more advanced stage, and her health started to deteriorate more dramatically. Turner managed to muster the strength to make one more public appearance, despite the fact that she was in a fragile state. Around the month of September in the year 1994, she was present at the San Sebastian International Film Festival in Spain, where she was presented with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Turner, as well as the crowds who had idolized her for decades, experienced a profound emotional response because of the appearance. Despite the fact that Turner had once been the epitome of beauty and splendor, she now spent the most of the event seated in a wheelchair, which is a striking representation of the devastation that disease can cause. I am also impressed by her bravery in confronting the public while she was in a vulnerable situation. Because it would be the last time she would be seen in public, her attendance at the festival was a farewell that was both bittersweet and bittersweet. More than a year later, on June 29, 1995, Lana Turner passed away at the age of 74 in the comfort of her own home in Century City, which is located in the city of Los Angeles. Complications from cancer were stated as the cause of death in the medical report. Her one and only daughter, Cheryl Crane, was present at her bedside during her final moments. She later characterized her mother's passing as a complete and utter surprise at the time. Cheryl made the observation that Turner had recently finished 7 weeks of radiation therapy and had actually appeared to be in better health. This gave rise to the hope that she may once again overcome the odds. Consequently, the quick fall in her condition was even more sad overall. The contents of Lana Turner's will were the cause of both legal and emotional drama, despite the fact that she had left clear instructions for the distribution of her estate in her will. Although Cheryl Crane and Joyce Leroy, whom Turner had once affectionately referred to as a second daughter, did receive some personal belongings and a sum of $50,000, the majority of Turner's estate, which is estimated to be worth $1.5 million, was not left to her family, but rather to Carmen Lopez Cruz, who had been her devoted maid and caretaker for 45 years. Over the course of nearly half a century, Cruz had been by Turner's side, and he had been particularly helpful in providing care for her during the final years of her sickness. The decision that Turner made to show his appreciation for her commitment by rewarding her in such a substantial way was not only an expression of affection, but also of gratitude for a lifetime of service and companionship. Nevertheless, this division of the estate was not without its share of disagreements. By challenging the will, Cheryl Crane most likely felt as though she had been taken aback by what she thought to be a slight. And further layer of complexity was added to the situation when Cruz responded that a significant portion of the estate had already been depleted due to the expenses associated with the probate process, the fees charged by the attorney, and the exorbitant costs of Turner's medical treatment, which had accumulated over the course of her protracted fight against cancer. There was a bittersweet quality to the conclusion of Turner's life that was accentuated by the legal and financial battle that followed. An individual who had been in the public eye for a considerable amount of time, but whose final days were characterized by illness, diminishing fame, and the intricacies of human relationships. Lana Turner continues to be a legendary figure despite the difficulties she has faced, not only because of her legendary beauty and cinematic presence, but also because of the tenacity and dignity with which she confronted the years of her life ending. An extraordinary life that was molded by triumph, scandal, survival, and finally legacy came to an end with her passing. Her life was truly exceptional,